Hi, everybody. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me. As I've indicated, since the very beginning, these are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates across the country. If they are covering something that is of great national importance, we're going to bring it to you right here on CBS News 24/7. Let's begin. Russia launches a massive missile attack at Ukraine, but says it's in retaliation to the United States' involvement in the war, while the Kremlin cited President-elect Donald Trump in its statement about the attack. Plus, evidence is mounting against Luigi Mangione, what police are learning about the murder suspect and his movements before and after the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And calls for answers are growing after those mysterious drones appeared hovering beyond New Jersey. What we know, what we don't know. This is CBS News 24/7. All right, we begin this hour with a massive Russian strike over Ukraine, targeting the country's energy facilities. President Volodymyr Zelensky described it as one of the heaviest bombardments since the Russian invasion almost 3 years ago. The Kremlin says the attack was in retaliation for a Ukrainian strike on a Russian airbase using U.S.-supplied weapons. I want to bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay for more on this. Chris, what are you hearing about this attack from not just our partners there and the reporters on the ground, but what you're hearing in London?
Hey, Vlad. You know, what we're hearing is that this is one of the largest and most intense aerial assaults on Ukraine virtually since Russia's full-scale invasion nearly 30 years ago. Russia, in this specific attack, launched 93 missiles and almost 200 drones targeting critical infrastructure, namely the energy sector. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says their defenses shot down 81 missiles with help from Western-supplied F-16 fighter jets. Now, despite these efforts, the damage has been significant. Parts of Ukraine's power grid have been hit, and while energy workers are racing to fix things, blackouts are affecting civilians. The International Atomic Energy Agency says that 5 of Ukraine's 9 nuclear power plants reduced electricity generation due to renewed attacks on energy infrastructure facilities. These strikes are part of Russia's ongoing strategy to cripple Ukraine's energy sector, especially during the cold, freezing winter months, to weaken morale when cold weather really can make a difference between life and death.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Meanwhile, the president-elect, Chris, has criticized Ukraine's use of U.S.-supplied missiles for attacks on Russia. How is Trump playing a role in the war without even having taken office yet?
Right, even before he's inaugurated. Well, Trump just said yesterday that Ukraine's use of American long-range weapons to attack deep inside Russia is making the situation worse. That's a direct quote. Russia didn't miss a beat today. The Kremlin spokesman embraced that criticism, essentially giving Moscow like a talking point to frame Ukraine as the aggressor, despite the fact that this, of course, was a war that Russia started. And this adds to the uncertainty in Kyiv and the international community, because Ukraine relies heavily on U.S. military aid, and Trump has repeatedly questioned that support, vowing to end the war quickly in one day, in 24 hours. He said this multiple times without specifying how he plans on doing that. And all of that leaves Ukrainian leaders and their allies wondering if they can count on continued American assistance, which is vital for their defense. So, yes, even though Trump hasn't taken office yet, his comments are shaping the dynamics on the ground, Vlad.
Excellent reporting, as always. Chris Livesay for us in London. Thank you very much. Okay, let's bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, who's also tracking developments. Nicole, any word from the Trump team about the comments that Russia made, that they agree with the president-elect's position on the war?
You know, not as of yet, but as you just pointed out with Chris, I mean, the president-elect just yesterday in a new interview with Time magazine did criticize the decision to allow Ukraine to use U.S. weapons to strike Russia. He feels that that is just further escalating the war. And we did see this statement from the Kremlin this morning saying that they believe that Trump's views conform to theirs. So that being said, the president-elect's posture certainly has been to try to end this war. He has said he could end this war in 24 hours once he takes office. And he has also called for an immediate ceasefire between the two countries.
Back here at home, Nicole, the president-elect is heading to the Army-Navy game in Maryland this weekend, and we're also learning that the vice president-elect, J.D. Vance, has invited Daniel Penny to the game. Of course, we know that he was just acquitted this week on negligent homicide charges in the death of Jordan Neely. Why is he extending an invitation to Penny?
Yeah, well, this is something that J.D. Vance actually posted about on X, saying that he believes Daniels is a good guy and that he hopes he's able to have some fun at this game and appreciates his courage and admires his courage. And quite frankly, Daniel Penny has been held up as this hero on the right for the situation involving Jordan Neely, even though obviously there is a lot of controversy over this verdict and over the circumstances surrounding Jordan Neely's death. But certainly, whether it is J.D. Vance or Speaker Mike Johnson, who has praised Daniel Penny as a hero, we have certainly seen Daniel Penny do the rounds on conservative media as well, essentially saying that he was concerned if he didn't act, that others on the train could have been harmed. So for that reason, that's why many are hailing him as a hero and why the vice president-elect is inviting him to this weekend's game.
And finally, Nicole, let me ask you about these donations that the president-elect is getting from Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and Meta's Mark Zuckerberg. They've each contributed $1 million to the president-elect's inauguration fund. Amazon will also stream the inauguration, an event that's valued another $1 million. What are you hearing about what this signifies?
Well, certainly we know that the president-elect has a very cozy relationship with Elon Musk, for instance, who heads X. And so, in terms of Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, obviously, we know Mark Zuckerberg was just at Mar-a-Lago not too long ago. Jeff Bezos is expected to come to Mar-a-Lago in the coming days, according to the president-elect. So whether or not this is an attempt to also kind of cozy up to the president-elect, or at least just have a working relationship with him, even though at times he has been at odds, particularly with someone like Meta's Mark Zuckerberg. For that reason, that could be a part of why he is getting those donations, although for some of these companies' parts, they argue that this is something that they also offered up during Biden's inauguration. So they're not trying to be partisan in making these types of donations to the upcoming inauguration.
All right, Nicole Killian for us this morning. Thank you, Nicole. Turning to Syria now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Iraq this morning for an unannounced visit as he discusses the situation in Syria with partners in the region.
We spent time talking about, understandably, the situation in Syria. And the conviction of so many countries in the region and beyond that as Syria transitions from the Assad dictatorship to hopefully a democracy, it does so in a way that, of course, protects all of the minorities in Syria, that produces an inclusive, non-sectarian government, and does not become in any way a platform for terrorism.
Now, this comes as thousands of people have gathered in the Syrian capital of Damascus for the first Friday prayer since the fall of the Assad regime. Our MTS Taib has more from northern Syria.
We're here in the rural Aleppo countryside, and as you can see, so much of it is still in ruins. And everywhere we go, we see scenes like this, including in Aleppo City, which is Syria's second largest city. And the reason Aleppo is so significant is that it was the first major center to be by rebel forces when they stormed through, took that city, and ultimately made their way to Damascus, taking the capital city and ousting Bashar al-Assad after 24 years of his brutal dictatorial rule, ending over half a century of his family's dynastic control of Syria. But now the main rebel group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is in control of the capital and is looking for international recognition. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that the U.S. will consider recognizing Hayat Tahrir al-Sham under a few conditions, namely destroying any chemical weapons, renouncing terrorism, and promising the rights of women, and minorities. But the incoming Trump administration is taking a far harder line, with one top official saying that the jury is still out on HTS and its leader, al-Jawlani. But for many Syrians who still face a very uncertain future when it comes to the ruins of their country, they hope that whatever happens next, is that they'll be able to build Syria with the help of the rest of the world. Back to you.
All right, NTS, thank you very much. Now to the developing story of an American found in Syria yesterday after months in captivity. The man, identifying himself as 29-year-old Travis Timmerman of Missouri, had been detained for nearly 7 months after crossing into Syria illegally during a Christian pilgrimage. Our Ian Lee has spoken to his family, and he joins me now from Kansas City to talk more about them. Ian, it's good to see you, my friend. So what was Travis's family's reaction to the news that he had been found alive and well in Syria?
Hi, Vlad. Yeah, you know, the family's really overjoyed knowing that he is alive and he is well. And they've seen the videos and they're just overjoyed. His mother yesterday was just so happy she couldn't talk, so we were able to speak to his cousin. But the last time that they actually heard from him was early in the summer, and they said they got a cryptic message saying that he was going to be offline for a few days. Well, that turned into months. They started a massive search for him, and as his cousin told me, they were starting to lose hope. And what's the first thing you're going to do when you see him?
Oh, definitely give him a big old hug and tell him he's not leaving the United States for a long time.
You know, he was gone for many months. What was going through your minds during that time?
It's hard not to think of negative thoughts at that time. We were kind of thinking it was going to be the worst outcome for us.
And Vlad, during that time, his sister had a baby girl. And so the family thought it was just so strange that he hadn't come back. So that's one thing they're looking forward to when he does return to the United States, is introducing him to his new niece.
Love that. And did they have any questions for Travis at all, Ian? I mean, anything that they want to know? Why he chose such a dangerous country to take on this pilgrimage, for example? That's my question.
Yeah, Vlad, and you know, I think they're going to have a lot of questions to ask him behind closed doors too. Some, they're not very happy that he kind of just disappeared like that, because the last time they knew where he was in Budapest, and then all of a sudden he pops up in Syria. So first question is definitely, why did he go to Syria? The second question they want to know is why he didn't call them sooner. He said in prison he had access to a cell phone. He said he called his family 3 weeks ago, but talking to his cousin Mandy, she said, well, no one in the family got a phone call from him, so they're wondering who he was talking to. And third, you mentioned that he was on a religious pilgrimage, and Mandy said she wanted to know if he found what he's looking for in that pilgrimage, but definitely they want to get him back here safe and sound, give him that big old hug. They say that is the best Christmas gift they could ask for. Vlad.
All right, Ian Lee for us this morning. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate it. All right, let's take you live now to a press conference right here in New York, being covered by our sister network, CBS News New York, over those drones over New York and New Jersey.
And yet we're told, don't believe what you see. It's shocking to us that here we are almost a month later, 3,000 sightings, drones, manned aircraft, and our folks don't have an answer. We're calling upon not just the New York City Police Department, but others to get involved, get aggressive, figure out what these things are, and help at least alleviate some of the frustration, anxiety that many people share. This is 2024. They're either lying or they're incompetent or they're both. How can we, the United States of America, have this going on and we're told just look the other way, ignore it, it's no big deal? We know for a fact that there may be some who are, performing some type of surveillance. Well, let's be honest with the American people and treat them like adults and tell them what it is. Yet here we are, standing, because we know recently there were reports over this asset, the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Here we are in Fort Wadsworth, one of the oldest military installations in the country. There was, we believe, a drone flying above the bridge. We also know on the other side of the island there was a drone flying over New York Container Port in the Goethals Bridge. And we're supposed to just let it be? Come on, folks, step up to the plate and be honest and truthful with the American people, the people of Staten Island, and solve this problem once and for all. We're in this together. I know we have many folks around this region who are weighing in now. It's about time. We started a couple of weeks ago asking that, along with the Congresswoman, to include at least Staten Island in any investigation that's going on at the FAA and the FBI. This is not to take away from them. They didn't start this problem, but they have an obligation to let us know what the heck is going on. As I said, we're all in this together, and representing us in D.C. and Congress is our Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis.
Thank you, Vito.
All right, you've been watching a press conference here in New York City as officials call for an investigation into those drone sightings across New York and New Jersey. We're going to have much more on that later this hour, and also what we're learning about them at this time. Meanwhile, a new band of snow is hitting several counties in New York, forcing a state of emergency in several counties. 2 towns have issued driving bans. The Buffalo Bills even canceled their practice. Some areas could see up to 3 feet of snow. Let's bring in CBS News national weather correspondent Rob Marciano with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Rob.
Vlad, they canceled practice. They played a full game in like a foot of snow a week ago.
What's going on out there?
I guess I don't need the practice after that dominating performance with the Niners. Hey, Vlad, listen, we're about to wind down the snow across the Great Lakes, at least for now. But it has been quite a snowstorm, certainly across parts of Lake Oswego, or Oswego, where they're still getting some snow right now, just north of Syracuse. And off Lake Erie as well, we saw anywhere from 2 to 3.5 feet of snow falling in some of these bands. Lake effect snow warnings exist until about 1 o'clock today off Lake Erie, and then until about 7 o'clock tonight off Lake Ontario. So we've got cold air in place. Don't have to tell you that if you live anywhere in the eastern half of the country. Everybody's cold right now, or at least seasonally cold. Temperatures are right around 34 degrees for a high temperature in New York today, with the wind feeling like 25, feels like -5 in St. Cloud. So there's that. And 13 degrees for a wind chill in Omaha, Nebraska, 27 in Kansas City. That cold air sets up the potential for seeing an ice storm in the Midwest. Matter of fact, we have ice storm warnings out for places in Iowa. We'll talk more about that in the next hour. Vlad, back over to you.
All right, Rob, thank you very much. We'll chat with you a little bit later. Thanks. All right, a small plane crashes into a New York highway. What we're learning about the fatal incident. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. In New York, one person was killed and another was injured in a plane crash along a highway in Westchester County. The cause of the crash is now under investigation. The plane took off from an airport in Linden, New Jersey, and was headed to the Westchester County Airport, but crashed about 1.5 miles from its destination. New details are emerging about the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, and prosecutors have begun presenting evidence from the case to a New York grand jury. CBS News correspondent Lily Luciano is joining me now to talk more about this. She's been covering the story from the very beginning, and you're one of the rare times you're here in the studio to talk about a story that you've been on the road for. So let's talk about this grand jury evidence that they're looking at, that his lawyers have no clue as to what they might actually be seeing.
Neither do we, but what we do know from NYPD sources is that the NYPD has, according to them, forensic evidence placing the suspect, Luigi Mangione, at the scene of the crime. That is fingerprint evidence, not just from a water bottle and a Kind Bar wrapper that was found near the crime scene, but also from a cell phone that was found in the same vicinity in an alleyway. They also matched the shell casings, the ones that you remember said delay and possibly depose. Those 3 were matched to the ghost gun that the suspect was found carrying with him. So at least you have that kind of direct evidence that places him there. There's also the notebook that sources tell CBS News had a to-do list, had a thought about whether to make an attack with a bomb or a gun, and choosing a gun over a bomb because that would spare other lives, innocent lives. There's all kinds of, there's the 3-page document. There's all kinds of evidence that at least the NYPD, or that we're learning from our sources at the NYPD at CBS News, that a grand jury would have plenty of to indict him. And as you know, I mean, as any legal expert and non-expert knows, the bar is very low. His attorney does not have access, as a defense attorney in Pennsylvania, does not have access to that information. What I'm learning is that once there is an indictment, it is possible for his defense to get that evidence. So it's not disclosure. It's a little bit more complicated than that. There has to be an extradition. But they could start working on that defense after the indictment.
What I thought was interesting in your reporting last night and this morning on CBS Mornings is his whereabouts after the shooting, what police think. Because originally, when we were still just going off of what the police were telling us when he had not been found yet, we thought that he had taken a bus somewhere else. But then you had something new to report this morning.
It's remarkable to all of us that he didn't take the path that everybody thought, which was, or allegedly, which was the bus terminal out of the state.
Right. Instead
of that, which was 120 blocks north from the crime scene, what police are saying, what police confirmed to our colleague Ali Bauman from WCBS, was that they believe he took a subway, the A-train subway, to Penn Station, which is only a mile away from the crime scene. Is that smart? Because you're kind of shaking off the trail? Or is that very risky, because now you're very close to the crime scene, and police believe that from there, then he would have taken a train to Pennsylvania.
Wow. Fascinating details.
It's a bit of a catch-me-if-you-can situation there that I'm trying to trace with the map and thinking, I mean, it seems to have worked until Altoona.
Right. And finally, so we think that he's probably going to lose this extradition battle, and he'll be extradited to New York in the next couple of days, weeks?
Yes. I mean, there is no real expectation that the extradition would be stopped. It's more of a delay. It could be a delay of up to 30 days. It seems what Governor Hochul has said is that the extradition really solidifies, that the indictment really solidifies the extradition and minimizes the opportunities for his defense in Pennsylvania to challenge the legality of it all, which is what they're saying. They're saying, we don't know what charges he's facing. Well, with an indictment, you do.
Wow, fascinating details there. Lily Luciano, thank you very much. Good to see you here in studio. Okay, the University of Michigan fired an administrator who oversaw its diversity initiatives over allegations of anti-Semitism. We're going to have the details next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. Jury deliberations in the trial over the murder of Cash App founder Bob Lee will resume Monday. The jury was unable to reach a verdict yesterday after 6 days of deliberations. Nima Momeni is accused of fatally stabbing Lee last year. He claims it was in self-defense. Momeni is facing first-degree murder charges, which could result in life in prison. If the jury can't reach a consensus, it could force a mistrial. The University of Michigan has fired a DEI official over allegations she made anti-Semitic remarks. According to documents obtained by the New York Times, Rachel Dawson was in charge of the university's academic multicultural initiatives. She's accused of saying the university was, quote, controlled by wealthy Jews, and that Jewish students were, quote, wealthy and privileged and didn't need her office's diversity services. Wow. Her lawyer denies she made any anti-Semitic comments. And in Florida, a woman was arrested for threatening a health insurance company. 42-year-old Brianna Boston called Blue Cross Blue Shield on Tuesday about recently denied claims. And at the end of the call, she allegedly said, quote, delay, deny, depose. You people are next. Now, those words are the same ones allegedly written on the bullet casings found at the scene of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson's murder. Boston was charged with threats to conduct a mass shooting or an act of terrorism. Returning now to our top story in the massive attack launched by Russia over Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow used nearly 200 drones in the strike and launched at least 93 missiles. 81 of those missiles were shot down. I want to bring in CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman for more on this story. So, Willie James, what is the White House saying about these attacks?
Hey there, Vlad. We checked in with the White House. We haven't heard back just yet, but President Zelensky of Ukraine is responding fiercely to this latest barrage of rockets and drones that have attacked his country. I want to bring up part of that statement from President Zelensky. He says, quote, "A strong reaction is needed from the world. A massive attack must be met with a massive reaction. This is the only way terror can be stopped." He went on to say in that tweet, as you mentioned perfectly, that some of those missiles were shot down by Ukrainian forces. I'll also note that President Biden is meeting with G7 leaders. Now, that's a closed, pressed meeting. Perhaps Ukraine will be top of mind with this discussion. Also, on top of that, the U.S. did announce yesterday a $500 million security assistance package for Ukraine. In a statement, the Secretary of State said this is urgently needed. These are urgently needed weapons and equipment to our Ukrainian partners. That's a quote from the Secretary of State, who is traveling at the moment. But still, Vlad, this attack, this latest attack from Russia, is certainly a call for allies like the United States to continue to provide support. President Biden has said that he would give all of the appropriated funds that have been set aside for Ukraine for that security assistance by the end of his term, Vlad.
Willie James, the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, says he believes that a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas may be close. Let's talk about that before we circle back to talk about what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right. Jake Sullivan was traveling in Israel. He's headed to Doha and Cairo next to talk about this ceasefire deal. And part of the conversation that he had with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was to talk about this ceasefire deal, but also to get those hostages back from Hamas. Sullivan mentioned that the goal is to get a deal done this month. He was asked about whether or not the Israelis are somehow waiting until January 20th, until President-elect Trump takes office, for any potential deal to come about. Sullivan pushed back on that notion and said that that is not the case, that he believes that they are working to come up with a deal now. I'll also mention that Sullivan met with some of the hostage families before he left for this recent trip. So this is part of the work that he's doing there in the region to come to some type of agreement with Hamas, between Israel and Hamas, for that deal. And as I mentioned, he's traveling to Doha and Cairo to come up with that deal and handle those discussions, Vlad.
So, Willie James, the question I have for you is, there have been a number of moments since President-elect Donald Trump won the election where he's reached out to foreign leaders, whether it's inviting the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping to Washington for the inauguration, or whether it's sort of trolling Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on social media. But I wonder, in this particular incident, in this particular moment, when we're talking about what's going on between Ukraine and Russia, if you've heard from the White House, if they feel that the president-elect is sort of overstepping his authority, because he is not yet the president of the United States. There's only one president at the moment, and that's Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's right. There have been a number of instances, as you mentioned, where President-elect Trump has had those conversations with other world leaders. He traveled, in fact, to France, met with Emmanuel Macron just last week. And the White House has essentially said that nothing to see here for the most part in terms of those conversations that the president-elect has been having when they're pressed about different situations, like President Xi being invited to the inauguration. They oftentimes defer us to the president-elect's team. It very much is an open question, Vlad, as to whether or not the president-elect is perhaps overstepping. That's something that the White House hasn't necessarily said that he's doing quite yet. But still, nonetheless, President-elect Trump is a well-known figure on the world stage, having served as president of the United States. And he does have those connections with other world leaders, including Emmanuel Macron, as I mentioned, and Zelensky as well. So those conversations will probably perhaps continue. But the White House still maintains that they are the ones in charge, and they are the ones handling international relations and those deals. As I mentioned, Sullivan in the region and Antony Blinken traveling as well, shoring up U.S. support around the region, especially when it comes to the situation in the Middle East and Ukraine, Vlad.
All right, Willie James Inman for us at the White House. Thank you, Willie James. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. French President Emmanuel Macron has named centrist ally François Bayrou as his new prime minister. Bayrou has been a well-known political figure in France for many decades, and the announcement comes just a week after France voted to oust its government. Macron vowed for his part to remain in office until his term ends in 2027. Okay, a new Justice Department report is revealing much more about the FBI's missteps ahead of the January 6th insurrection. Investigators say the FBI could have done more to gather intelligence before the violence escalated. CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns has more from the Hill, and she joins me now to discuss. All right, Caitlin, so what's in that report?
Hey, Vlad, good to see you. Well, two big headlines coming out from this report. This is from the Inspector General looking into ways the FBI could have prepared better for the attacks here at the Capitol. The big headline is that the FBI failed to canvass their local offices and information from those informants at those local offices, field offices, that could have provided some intelligence about the attacks. Information like groups like the Proud Boys, for example. Now, the Inspector General report said that was not intentional, but it did lead to a failure to present intelligence that could have helped on that day. Another big headline coming out from that report is that there were no undercover FBI agents present at the protests or in the attack on the Capitol. And that is essentially to address a lot of conspiracy theories that have been floating around for years on the far right that this was somehow provoked by undercover FBI informants. So this Inspector General report says that no undercover agents were present on that day.
All right, let me switch gears and let's talk about those budget talks that are going on in Washington. Congress, as you know, Caitlin, has a few days until the funding is set to run out. What's the deal? Are they able to keep the lights on during the holidays?
Yeah, this has become something of a holiday tradition where we're all waiting to see whether Congress can do its fundamental job of funding the government and keeping the government open. We are going up to that deadline here soon by the end of the year. Before Christmas, they want to get something done. We are hearing that they are likely to pass a short-term measure to keep the government running through probably the end of the first quarter, around March or so. And the question is whether, Democrats who are going to be needed to pass this measure, whether they try to exert any pressure and get things that they want, especially funding for disaster relief, for example. But what's really interesting here, Vlad, is that Republicans, especially conservatives, are usually opposed to these short-term spending measures. This time, however, if you think about that timeline, March gets you into the new administration, of course, where Republicans will have a majority here in the Senate. They'll have a majority in the House, albeit a slim one, and of course, Donald Trump in the White House. So more leverage they could seek in a few months from now. But all signs indicate that they will kind of kick the can further down the road. So you shouldn't expect any Christmas-related shutdowns.
All right. Well, that's good news. Caitlin, thank you very much. As always, my friend, appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Firefighters have made some progress battling those flames in Malibu, California, allowing thousands of people to return to their homes. This is some brand new video taken from a Ventura County fire helicopter. CAL FIRE says its Franklin fire is now about 30% contained. It has burned more than 4,000 acres since it started on Monday night. Let's bring in CBS News national weather correspondent Rob Marciano with another look at the national forecast. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Vlad. Good news for California in that there is some rain coming in, mostly for Northern California, but it will spread down to the south. And hopefully the pattern that we're in will end the fire season. But obviously, very tough go there, especially in Southern California and Malibu. Very tough across much of the eastern two-thirds of the country with this cold air. It certainly hits you in the face this time of year. We're all not used to it. Temperatures in the Midwest, you think it's cold in the Northeast. Look at this. Des Moines, 11 degrees, feels like -4 right now. 11 in Chicago, feels like 3, feels like 13 below in Minneapolis. So that cold air is in place. And we have a system now that's developing. It's going to bring some moisture over that cold air, and that's never a good thing. So we have ice storm warnings and winter weather advisories that stretch from Davenport through Des Moines, back through Omaha, Minneapolis as well. The core is going to be right in through the central part of Iowa. So let's roll through the maps here. That pink is never a good sign. This is going to be mostly freezing rain. So ice accumulations can be anywhere from 1/4, in some cases to 1/2 inch. Mostly a mixture of sleet, snow, and some freezing rain across Minneapolis. But as you head towards tomorrow morning, look at this. A little bit of warm air starts to sneak in. So hopefully it'll be short-lived. By tomorrow afternoon, most everybody gets above freezing. But until then, that ice storm warning is in place. And just keep in mind, if you live anywhere that does tend to get winter weather, here's some safe driving tips for you. The bridges, the reason that they cool faster than the roadways, well, the roads are more insulated. They only radiate to the top. And the bridges obviously can radiate heat both from the top and the bottom, and obviously the winds kind of cool things off there. So take it easy over the bridges. All right, let's go to the West Coast. Here comes that rain. You saw the San Francisco Niners game last night. Don't mean to pick on you guys, but that wasn't a good one. Great game against the Bears last weekend. Heavy rain right now coming into Northern California. So Eureka, looking at it, the Siskiyou is going to see some snow out of this. Winter storm warnings are posted for the parts of the Sierra, mostly above about 6,000 feet, so pretty high snow level event. Flood watches north of San Francisco, and could see a couple of feet of snow above that 6,000 foot. So here's that system. Pretty wind maker as well, coming into both Northern California and parts of the Northwest. This is one that goes coast to coast. So it will get over the mountains eventually and get into the Midwest where they're having that ice storm tomorrow. And that'll be by Monday morning. It'll be through Chicago mostly as a rain event, and then eventually getting towards the Northeast. And look at this, another system coming into the West. So turning from a bit of a lull out west to more active weather pattern going forward. That's good for the snowpack, good for the drought, and certainly good for the fires that have been a problem across, especially Southern California. Vlad?
All right, Rob, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it. All right, those investigations into the mysterious drones, they are expanding, and now they've been spotted hovering beyond New Jersey. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. New York City lawmakers are calling on the NYPD and the federal government to solve the growing drone mystery spreading across the Northeast. More than 3,000 sightings reported thus far. Just a few moments ago, New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis addressed this situation. CBS News New York is covering it. Let's watch.
The world's on Staten Island. And now we feel like we're characters in that movie. What is happening is outrageous. Thousands of drones and unmanned aerial systems flying above us, and our government is not telling us who's operating them and for what purpose. I don't believe that the United States of America, with its military capabilities, does not know what these objects are. And what I'm asking, and what we're all asking, is for you to be straight with us and just tell us what is going on. As Vito says, this is creating havoc. People are confused, they're concerned. They have anxiety. They don't know what's going on. There's all sorts of theories that are out there. And the best way to address this is to just be honest and tell the American people what is going on. These are not recreational drones. These are not, I don't believe, commercial drones, because if they are violating existing rules and regulations, which say that they need to be under 400 feet and they can't be operating in the middle of the night between sunset and sunrise. So that leaves two options. It's our government, or there's a foreign nexus. And so either our government is doing some type of surveillance activity or survey.
All right, let's bring in Pramod Abichandani, Associate Professor at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So the idea that some of these could be ordinary aircraft, the wingspan was described by some as 8 feet. I heard somebody else describe it as big as a Mini, a Cooper Mini. I mean, that's pretty big for a drone, but it's probably still too small for an airplane, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you think about the kind of drones you get at a Walmart or an Amazon store, those are tiny drones. But then as you go more towards the enterprise level drone, the more sort of bigger drones, they start getting into like the 3 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet wide spans. Now, one thing to keep in mind is just because a drone size is big doesn't necessarily always make it threatening. Like this picture that you're showing, that is a pretty big drone. And there are drones that are used in agricultural applications, as well as just drones that are made by different companies that are quite big, and they kind of range in that 6 to 8 feet wingspan, or just the length of the arms. So it is true that these are not the recreational drone types, but it is also true that they're not like massive sort of the bigger drones that you see with long range endurance that usually the military uses.
So, Professor, you used the word drones. You've used it several times in our discussion. You believe that they are drones, right?
Well, some of the eyewitness videos that I have watched, some of the conversations we've had with other experts and colleagues, some of them are not drones. Some of them are just straight up your helicopters and manned aircrafts. It's just air traffic. On the other hand, there are drones that look like, the kind of drones that you would purchase off a vendor's website. Those are big drones, but they still display the characteristic of a commercially available drone. And then there are some videos, like a very small number of videos where it's blurry enough, it's not clear enough that you can. It's hard to ascertain whether these are really like small aircrafts that are being piloted by somebody in them, or are these like slightly bigger type drones that are being remotely piloted.
Wow. All right. Whose responsibility would you say it is to track these things down? The Monmouth County Sheriff in New Jersey says that they're flying their own equipment in the area in hopes of getting some answers. Should this be a federal response?
Yeah, so with drones, it takes a village, and I think it's personally, I know that it's very hard to not only detect a drone but also track it and then ultimately interdict it, like capture it. A lot of my research that has been funded by the U.S. Department of Defense focuses on these counter UAS systems. There's no simple answer to this. The only thing that is clear is it requires the whole apparatus to come together, to coordinate, to have great communication between the teams on the ground and the radar centers, just to make sure that that not a single piece of evidence is lost.
Fascinating. All right, Professor Pramod Abichandani, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, folks, it was a big night for Taylor Swift at last night's Billboard Music Awards, but a surprise visit from the superstar made someone else's night. We've got the story coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Taylor Swift won big at last night's Billboard Music Awards. She took home 10 awards, including Top Artist and Top Female Artist. She now has the most Billboard Music Awards in history. Swift was not in attendance, but instead, this is what I love about the story. Instead of being in attendance at that award ceremony, she went to a children's hospital in Kansas City. Watch this.
And what day is today?
My last chemo.
Yay! Oh my gosh.
And thank you for saying my outfit was tea.
Yes. Everything about it. Your hair.
You made my day with that.
So Taylor Swift signed Eras tour books, and she met with family members and staff. One parent posted photos online writing, Children's Mercy Hospital does their best to nurse seriously ill children, comfort family, and bring a little joy when they can. Today did not disappoint. Thank you, Taylor Swift, for bringing some joy. Let's bring in CBS News national weather correspondent Rob Marciano. Even if you're not a Taylor Swift fan, Rob, you gotta love that. And I am a fan. She was my #3 streamed artist on my Spotify playlist. But there was one child who wrote, they had a sewed on a blanket, a Kansas City Chiefs logo, and wrote to Travis Kelce's girlfriend and gave it to her.
I love it.
That was
I
so
love
cute.
that she's playing second fiddle. Not very often. She's definitely making an imprint on the community there.
100%. 100%. What else is making an imprint on communities across the country?
Just about everybody is getting into it as far as having some sort of weather, be it winter weather, winter cold, or some rain and some ice. So we've got ice storm warning. We talked about that across the Midwest. We've got some action across parts of the Northwest and the Northern California area. We saw some rain last night. That'll intensify today. Heavy mountain snow going forward with that, and could see 1 to 2 feet of snow in the Sierras, which they could certainly use. And we'll take any sort of snowfall and rainfall out west because we have that decadal drought going on. So the more we get now, the less we have to deal with later.
It's going to be warm here in New York City.
Yes, right about May, June should be sweet.
Okay, I'll see you back here.
Vlad, come on.
Rob Marciano, thank you very much, my brother. Nice to have you in studio. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.